You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Blake, and welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, and thank you for hanging out with me. As you probably already can tell, this sounds a little bit different because I'm recording this while watching the oil drain from my truck in slightly below freezing weather. It's a long story, I won't get into that, but it's something I gotta do right now. But more importantly, the shred shed is slightly dismantled for another reconfiguration, hopefully to help along the workflow. So this was the best I could do for the intro, which needed to get out tonight. So anyway, shout out Nick from Playback Engineering. I'm sure he'll make everything sound as good as it possibly can for a random dad standing out in his side yard working on his pickup truck. Anyway, this one is going to sound a little bit different altogether because while I was in my normal recording place for the episode, the connection was a little bit weird, so Kelly and I might talk over each other a little bit here in parts. We had to break and come back a few times, and so the flow's not quite as smooth as normal, but his story is absolutely fascinating, and we're getting into the story of the First Act Custom Shop, which has been a question mark in the guitar industry for a lot of players for a very long time. And I won't rehash everything right here, but basically, First Act got into making very high-end guitars in the mid-2000s, and people were very confused because everyone knew them for basically their big, huge supermarket, like Walmart-style guitars for kids. And the custom shop confused a lot of pro players and a lot of guitar enthusiasts, myself included. And I wanted to get Kelly on because these guitars have become almost the stuff of legend. And he was instrumental in this happening. And I wanted to get him on to tell the whole story. Plus, he's just really fun and he makes absolutely stunning instruments. So please check him out at Butler Guitars. And I hope you enjoy this episode despite its weird little flaws here. And I want to note, just before we jump in here, that we're nearing the end of the month that you can get 10% off your StewMac order. I say this just because we're almost there. As soon as this drops, we are going to be out of that period, like before you even know it. So make sure you go to stewmac.com/tonemob so you can get 10% off of anything you're wanting to order. So check that out, and then let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Lyland, and with me today, I have Kelly Butler from, well, lots of things. So we'll let him tell you about it. How's it going, man?
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yeah, here. We always say here, but usually we're not actually here. Yeah. You know? It's kind of a weird thing.
You know, I just realized I don't actually know where you are right now. I'm in Tennessee.
So I am in Portland, Oregon, or just outside Portland, Oregon. Tennessee is my home away from home. I go to Nashville fairly frequently. So, yeah, I love Tennessee.
Never call.
I'm sorry. Well, I didn't know you were in Tennessee, so now I know. I'll have to call. So, whereabouts in Tennessee are you?
I'm just south of Nashville in Franklin, Tennessee.
I know right where that is.
I grew up in Nashville.
Cool. Yeah, Nashville is definitely my home away from home. And I imagine I'll be there at least once in 2023, if not multiple times. So we'll have to get some Princes or something.
I'm all in.
Nice. So Kelly, I wanted to get you on primarily, well, for lots of reasons, but we had been talking online about a lot of the First Act stuff, which is probably a little bit confusing to some listeners, but if anybody pays attention to the heavier music communities, I think they'll see that there's been a resurgence of interest around the, what did you say, probably the early/mid 2000s first act stuff, especially the custom shop stuff. And I know you had a heavy hand in all of that, and I thought most of us don't know the story there. Let's get you on to clue us into what was going on back then.
So the whole first act custom shop thing was it was a fantastic experience. They were primarily known as a company that made entry-level instruments that were for sale at mass retail places like Walmart and Toys R Us and Target and, you know, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided they wanted to try to lend some credibility to the brand name by making some pro-level guitars and getting them in the hands of artists. So they brought me on board to do that, to kind of set up that custom shop and run it and do design work and the whole deal. They hired me away from the Gibson Custom Shop
Mm-hmm.
to come do that. And after, I showed up moved away from Tennessee, showed up in Boston, and they handed me a key to a big empty shop and a company credit card and said, "Go make guitars."
Whoa.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So, which is a little different, as you might imagine, from the corporate structure at Gibson. It was a little more restrictive. So I asked the owner, what kind of guitars do you want to make? What are we doing here? He just said to me, "Kelly, you're the expert. You decide." And, you know, for a guy that makes guitars, that's kind of a dream job, to have that kind of financial backing and corporate structure to help you along with it. It was a great thing. So we started to develop some stuff, and we quickly realized that it was going to be more than a one-man operation.
Mm-hmm.
So we brought on a couple more guys from the Gibson Custom Shop, Bill Jankar and John McGuire, and essentially, and you know, really, I had a great crew there, a great group of guys, and they're very responsible, as much as anyone, for everything that went on there. But you could kind of say that the first act custom shop stuff was built by the Gibson Custom Shop employees.
Right.
And in our effort to get these guitars in the hands of artists, we also brought Jimmy Archie on board, also from Gibson at the time, as our artist relations guy. And if you know Jimmy, you know Jimmy knows everybody, and everybody knows Jimmy.
Yep.
He's he was instrumental in getting these guitars in the hands of a lot of these mid 2000s artists. A lot of the artists that you would see on the Vans, on the Warped Tour and stuff like that. Those guys, probably just about every band that was on the Warped Tour in the mid 2000s, they had at least one first act custom shop guitar in their arsenal. And really, that was really Jimmy Archie steering the ship as far as that part goes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a great time, and we made some great guitars that I'm still proud of today. And a lot of people are kind of looking for them now, because I mean, there hasn't been anything made. The custom shop shut down, I think, in 2010, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So those guitars are, you know, harder to find, and people aren't really letting go of them. So yeah, great stuff, and it was a fantastic journey through all of that. The difficult part for us in the custom shop was understanding that our whole reason for existing as the custom shop was to drive to lend credibility to the brand name and
Mm-hmm.
drive sales at the mass retail level. So that was a little hard for us because we wanted the custom shop to be the thing, but First Act was much larger than just the custom shop.
Right.
So
right.
that was a difficult pill for us to swallow as creative individuals who just want to make a bunch of cool guitars and sell them and get them out there on the market,
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting strategy, specifically because, I think Fender does that really well with, the Squires and things like that, but they are very specifically in guitar retail. Yes, they do have products in Walmarts and Costco's and stuff as well, but it's not what you think of first. With First Act, that was the first thing you thought of was the ones in those big box retailers, and the customers that shop at those big box retailers aren't even going to necessarily be aware that the custom shop exists. So it's kind of an interesting strategy.
You're right.
I almost think that it should have stood on its own in some ways. It's kind of, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah. I remember interviewing for the position and saying at that time that the custom shop stuff probably should be under a different brand or something, because of the already preconceived notion about First Act as a brand itself. And I brought that up a lot in meetings and things like that until at one point they one of the owners said, "Don't bring that up again. We're not doing that." So that was where I had to really understand what our reason for existing was.
Sure.
And yeah, you're right that it's much easier to come out with your higher end product and then offer a less expensive version of it than it is to start off with the really, really inexpensive stuff, and then all of a sudden you're making higher end stuff. It's
right.
It's a difficult business model. Had we started the other way, had we started as a guitar company, the custom shop, and then offered First Act as our entry level product, then maybe things would have been a little more understandable. But they were a company that was, I guess the whole guitar thing was they saw an opportunity to fill a hole in the mass retail market.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time there really weren't any guitars in the mass retail market. There used to be a lot. Like when I was a kid growing up, we would thumb through the Sears catalog and look at guitars, and those were available then. But now, or at least at the time when First Act started their mass retail line, there was a hole in the market that they were just trying to fill.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Merit Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Meris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at Meris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services. and it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. Okay, sorry folks, we got disconnected there for a second, but we are back and things appear to be okay for the moment. So fingers crossed. But anyway, we were talking about the strategy and everything around First Act. Were you there when they did finally decide to shut down the custom shop, or were you already gone?
So the way that kind of happened, it was right around near the end of 2008. I started the thing in 2002, and near the end of 2008 or mid 2008, something like that, I started noticing that some of the marketing money that was being used to promote the custom shop stuff, as far as ads in guitar magazines and that sort of thing, a lot of the attention was starting to be focused on other things that the company was trying to do. And I kind of got the feeling, you know what? I think they're almost done with this custom guitar shop project. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking maybe it's time for me to move on. So I took a position with a non-guitar entity back in Tennessee, and moved back to Tennessee. And it seems like within about 6 months of me leaving, they've let go about half the staff in the custom shop. And then John McGuire, with kind of a skeleton crew, he kind of took over running the shop, and he continued, I think, for maybe about 2 years. I want to say it was roughly about 2 years that he continued doing it before they finally decided to just shut it down completely.
Wow.
And that's one of the problems with being really more, our shop really was more of a marketing entity than it was a revenue generator. So that's what's going to happen. At some point, a company is going to decide, hey, let's market something else now, or let's stop investing in this marketing plan and invest in a different marketing plan.
Mm-hmm. So based on your experience at Gibson, would you say that the approach is somewhat similar at Fender and Gibson as well? Because obviously they sell way more custom shop than most people do, but it still seems like it's a prestige move more than what really brings in the money for them, at least outside looking in.
Well, I mean, in a way, you're right, but Fender and Gibson, as well as others, are established, well-known guitar companies.
Right.
First Act was not what you would call a guitar company as a whole. Where they were, I don't want this to sound weird, but they could have been, if they had recognized a hole in the mass retail market for toasters, that's what they would have been making, was toasters. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah, they were, what can we make and what can we sell to make money and make this company profitable? So for a while, for a good while, it was guitars. But Fender and Gibson and whoever else, they're always going to be guitar companies, and they're not going to be making little musical toy puzzles for 3-year-olds. You know what I mean?
Right. So I want to ask you about some other non-First Act related things, but before we do that, I want to talk about something that I'm actually looking at right now, and it's probably the thing that most people, the people had most exposure to, whether they are aware of it or not. But so many people remember the commercials with Volkswagen and First Act and John Mayer and Slash and Nigel Tufnel, right? That was the
Yeah.
three.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So I'm guessing that it was probably First Act's idea, and the way it worked was that if you bought certain Volkswagen cars during that time period, it came with a First Act guitar that was engineered to work with the sound system in the car, which was really cool. You could plug it right into the system, and you're cranking through the speakers. It had an onboard uh, V-stack unit that actually makes has great distortion sounds and stuff like that in it. And not that you couldn't play it through an amp, it doesn't have to work with the car. But yeah, it was a great marketing idea, I thought. And there's tons of those guitars out there today as a result of that. You can find them just about anywhere. I've seen people playing them live on stage in various places. And that was I remember when they were getting ready to shoot the commercials for that, in particular the ones with Slash. Those guitars that were used in the commercials, to the best of my memory, we made those in the custom shop because they hadn't really gone into production yet. So we sent this thing out west to Slash to shoot this commercial, and then we get a call, and Slash says he doesn't play white guitars. So they're supposed to shoot this thing in like 2 days. So we have to build another guitar. We have to, shoot it black to get him to follow through with the agreement. And we did it. We got it done. We were there all night, and overnight shipping and all that stuff. I'm surprised the thing wasn't stuck to the inside of the case when he received it. But because it was a rush job. But it caused a big stink with Gibson as well, because Slash also at that same time as he still does, had a signature model with Gibson. So for him to be
Sure.
in a national commercial, playing a different guitar, promoting a different guitar company and a car company at the same time, they were not happy about that. And
I'm sure.
yeah, I not long before all that, I had received an invitation to a party at the Gibson Custom Shop, because I worked there a long time, had a lot of friends there. But I also received an official uninvitation to that party
Oh.
when all that stuff went down. Yeah, it was kind of funny. It was silly, but my recollection, I think Gibson's West Coast artist relations guy may have actually gotten fired for that happening. Like, not that he even had anything to do with it, but they viewed it as he let it happen. But really, it's just about money. You offer a guy that plays guitar for a living, you offer him enough money, he'll play guitar for a living for you. So
That's right.
yeah. So yeah, they did the commercials, and the thing I think the commercials were great, really, with Slash and John Mayer, and then the Nigel Tufnel one was fantastic. I don't know if you saw that, but he falls off the top of the car, and it was great. And it was a really cool thing, and I think it did a lot for promoting the company at that time. But it was a fun project.
So yeah, the videos, I remember, I was the perfect age for those when they came out. I remember just being obsessed. Fuse was a big MTV competitor at the time.
Yeah.
And those videos were all over Fuse, and I would be there watching my like punk rock videos and stuff, and all of a sudden, Slash is coming on, playing into the car. I remember like, whoa, you can plug into the car? That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. My mind was blown. But it's funny that you brought up the Gibson thing, because knowing a little bit about Gibson, especially at the time, under the Henry regime, I thought there's no way that they were okay with this. There's absolutely no way.
They were not okay with it. They were not okay with it, and that was, as you said, under the Henry regime, he kept everything very tight, and he didn't. A lot of it was ego driven, from what I could tell in my position when I was there. It was, yeah. I can imagine him. I can imagine him in a meeting just screaming and yelling and tearing his hair out in front of everybody once those commercials aired.
So this is kind of a random question, and I know these are very different departments, but I feel like I kind of have to ask just out of curiosity. Did you know a man by the name of Chris Gilchrist when you worked there?
I know that name.
He
I
was in
don't know if I could
charge
place
of,
it.
I don't know at that time what his role was, but when he left Gibson here a few years ago, he was basically in charge of dealer sales. He ran the whole, everybody that worked with the dealer, he was in charge of those people. At least that's my understanding of his role. But he works for us at Stringjoy now and has for a few years. He's a great dude.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. He may have been a little more corporate than I was at that point. I was on a bench doing, custom builds and design stuff and repairs and that sort of thing. So I may not have met him, but the name does sound familiar. I was there. He may have been there after I left, though. I was there from 95 through 02 until I went to First Act.
Got it. So actually, I do want to ask you this question. How did First Act find you?
It was on a dating app. They were looking for handsome guys.
Very progressive. Yeah. Not a lot of dating apps.
They were early adopters, as I was. They were looking for like the handsomest guy they could find, who could also make guitars. And I mean, you see it. I mean, look at.
I see it. Yeah, I see it. They swiped right or left. Actually, I don't know which way is good. Yeah.
Yeah. They actually, somehow, one of my buddies who was working in the pro shop. So at that time, Gibson had a small division within the custom shop called the pro shop, which I don't think exists anymore. And there were only I think there were like 5 of us that were in the pro shop. And somehow one of my buddies got wind that this company was looking for someone to do this gig. And he got an interview and he told me about it, and he wasn't interested in it. And so he told me about it. I sent him the resume, obviously with, an 8x10 glossy headshot so they could see all this. And I think that's what sold it. Yeah.
I mean, that had to have been it. That had to, there's no way that didn't seal the deal. Absolutely no way.
Clearly.
So you got out of the guitar business for a while. You were doing some non-guitar things, but it feels like it's one of those, Godfather type things. Like, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in because you're back at it.
Yeah. So I'm doing stuff under my brand name, K Butler Guitars. And, if you look at my stuff, clearly I'm doing some of the First Act body shapes, obviously.
Sure.
And some of it is just because I feel like it could have done more had it not been for the brand name itself. And I feel like some of those designs maybe didn't get a good enough look, didn't get a fair shake out in the industry. So yeah, I'm kind of revamping some of that, kind of remixing it. And you can definitely see it's weird to say influence because it was pretty much my stuff already, you
Right.
know. I mean, not that I made every decision. A lot of what we did, the majority of what we did there at First Act was the result of the whole team looking at things. I,
Hmm.
I might, if I designed whatever, drew something up on some paper, and I might uh, I might have 5, 6 different versions of it that I would lay out on the drafting table and have the rest of the guys, kind of vote and see which ones they liked best. Because sometimes I was too close to it to make the best decision on it. So I would always run it by the as I call them, the council of geniuses, and they would then I would go with whatever everyone seemed to like the most. So
Hmm.
and that's kind of what I'm doing
So
with the K Butler guitars as well.
So maybe you can clear up some of these things. There's people who weren't really around at the time that have now fallen in love with some of these instruments, and sometimes people are making videos about them and they're sort of speculating on the design elements and where they have came from. And I know you've chimed in on some of the conversations, but what actually did
Sometimes,
inspire some of these designs?
yeah. So sometimes I chime in when I should probably just keep my mouth shut, to be quite honest. But um, it's not my strong point, really. Uh, so really, like, what are you asking there with that?
So I guess what were some, like, these are really cool looking designs and they are unique and different, but they feel like they've been around before. So where do you get some of your
Yeah.
inspiration from?
So to me, like, you don't need to you don't need to reinvent the wheel with the guitar. And I've said this before, as much as guitar players want to envision themselves as these super creative and unique individuals, and in many ways they are, but when it comes to their instrument, most of the time they tend to be very traditional. So there have been a lot of guitars out there who were where they were very innovative and very had a lot of really unique features, but in spite of all that, they failed for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just always thought that a lot of times with when you over advertise these innovations, you kind of lose people. I've always thought that you should put your innovations in quietly and let people discover them, and then they're not as likely to be shit on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so so I guess my influence as far as design goes tends to be generally traditional, and um, I have things that I like if you look at the K Butler guitars, if you look at the 64, it's a small double cutaway body, and my favorite guitar growing up was always the double cut Les Paul Special.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to just rip off that guitar and just start making those. I mean, you can, anybody could. You'll get that old cease and desist letter in the mail, but yeah. But I just take the basic of that as what it is, a smaller solid body guitar with a nice sort of a fattish neck on it, and it's somewhat bare bones, which I grew up in the punk rock era. I feel fortunate to have seen the birth of punk rock. I saw the birth of rap. I saw the birth of metal. And so
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff influences me, and the things that some of my guitar heroes played. I just want to do, I guess, my version of that. So I'm not gonna, like I said, I don't want to just make a double cut Les Paul Special. There's already a company out there that makes those. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they do that. And so with that's what my 64 is is kind of based on. Really, it's meant to be a kind of a bare bones punk rock guitar. It's all rock and roll, all balls, all day, you know. And then if you look at something like from First Act, if you look at the Lola guitar, that was a single cutaway version of a guitar that I originally kind of designed at Gibson Custom Shop, which was never intended really to be in production, but it became the last thing I did before I left Gibson was I did this one-off guitar for a show, and it became the Johnny A signature model as a
yeah.
so it wasn't intended to be that when I originally designed it. It was just something cool I wanted to do, and it became the Johnny A signature model. And then at First Act, when we did the Lola guitar, which was a single cutaway, we did that as a double cut for a couple of different artists, and a lot of people kind of liked that. So we had the Lola, and then we had the double cut Lola, and then kind of modified that just a little, kind of opened up the cutaways just a little bit, and did it in a carved top version, which became what we called the DC9 and the DC6, which there were a lot of artists out there playing those at the time. I say a lot. There were some well-known artists out there playing that at the time. But ultimately all that started with the Johnny A signature model that was at Gibson for so long.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is why I wanted to get you on. This history, it's a history lesson for all of us, because none of us know where these things come from. We just remember, like I remember specifically a band, and the guy actually came on the show here several years ago, but the band Cancer Bats. And
love that band.
They're so good. So good.
Highly underrated band.
Definitely. They don't get enough love, and they should get all of the love. But I remember watching them and reading about them in like alternative press. And it's funny that you say, like, you talk about the the brand, how you were suggesting that maybe they do this under a different brand, because everybody I know, and I was a pretty new guitarist at the time, but even still, you have a pretty good idea of like who the top nice brands are. It's like, oh yeah, Gibson, Fender, some Ibanez stuff. Like, you know who the big brands are. And I remember reading about them in a magazine because I loved them so much, and I was like, plays a First Act? Everybody I know had that same reaction. Like, wait a minute, he plays a First Act? That doesn't make any sense. But at the time, we didn't know the story, nor did most people. Otherwise, I think the reaction would have been much different. And it's interesting that it took so many years for it finally to catch on. And it's funny how I think I heard about it the same way that most people did, which is like sort of like a hushed whisper. Like, no, did you actually know like the First Act Custom Shop was like really, really good? It was all like ex-Gibson people, and they actually made like really, really nice good. Like, it's kind of like this hushed thing that's now a well-known open. It's not really even a secret anymore. It's totally out in the open. And now these things are hard to get. My friend Steve from Does It Doom is like obsessed with them, and I don't think he's got 3 or 4 of them at this point.
I think Steve.
He's always buying them all hoarding those things.
Yeah.
And this episode's probably not going to help that, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, they're getting more expensive and harder to find. And Steve has been really grabbing up, from what I can tell, he's grabbing up all the DC6s and DC9s that he can get his hands on out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Steve's a good dude.
Well, the good news is he's a great dude, and he provides a lot of really great information on his page for people that are into that kind of stuff. Or if you're just into like learning how to tune your guitars differently. Mm-hmm. Like he provides a lot of great info for your average player. So I was going to say, but the great news is, since you're making these yourself now, I'm assuming here in the shop that we're looking at here on the screen, correct?
Yeah. You see all my
So,
nice insulation and stuff there. Yeah.
Well, it's custom. It's custom
It
insulation.
is full custom.
Yes.
Full custom.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's very, very specific spec. Most people wouldn't really understand. So you don't have to go into the details.
Man, I mean, it's so much science stuff that like I don't even think people could understand it. It's crazy.
But when did your own brand, when did you actually start doing that? How long has it been around?
Really only started doing it, I guess, a couple, maybe 3 years ago, roughly about 3 years ago. And partnered with some good folks who are kind of my business partners in this. And I in addition to my own brand, I kind of do some ghost building for a couple of other small companies that I can't really bring up right now. But
sure,
there's it's been about 3 years, and I'm not really trying to be a big some big production company. I'm not looking to crank out guitars by the hundreds or anything, but they tend to be, the guitars that people are getting from me tend to be very personal to them. They're kind of getting them to do some specific things with, and a lot of people it seems right now, a lot of people are kind of looking for a little something a little different, something maybe not everybody has, or something that they can get kind of customized to their specs. So I do a lot of that type thing.
That's cool. Do you also do like repair and maintenance type stuff too, or is it primarily just building?
So I do a little bit of repair, not that much. I used to do a lot more repair, but I kind of just do that for some buddies and some old customers. I'll keep doing stuff for them. I do teach at the Musicians Institute Guitar Craft Academy here in Nashville. So there's some good young talent getting out there into the industry right now that I've been fortunate enough to play at least a small role in their quest in the guitar building and repair. I've been doing that since 2017.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I know my partner Scott, he's went down there and he's done a few presentations, on strings, which most people probably think is a snooze fest, but we're super nerdy about it.
Yeah.
So
and I haven't been able to be there when he was there, but everybody was always thought it was a great presentation every time he's come to do that.
Yeah, it's a lot of information that you didn't know you wanted to know. I remember the first time he came on this episode, he reached out, came on this podcast, which is how we ended up hooking up and becoming business partners. My initial reaction was like, what? I'm going to talk to this guy about strings for an hour? Like how are we going to do that? That sounds really boring. It's not. It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah. And at the school over there, really, any knowledge that we can impart to the students, we're anxious to do it, whether it comes from the staff, us as instructors, or whether we bring in guys from various other companies to talk about some details. It's important that they know we offer them as much knowledge as we can.
We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because Let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Good Hertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblinssaudio.com. I think you're gonna like what you find.
Yeah, that's super important too, because I think a lot of people, string specifically, they even at many of the other Lutherie schools, it's not really a subject that gets touched on a whole lot. It's actually shocking how little information is out there about the thing that actually makes the sound of a guitar. It's kind of insane.
You're right. You're right about that. There's it gets overlooked because so many people are used to just going to whatever local guitar store and grabbing a pack of strings, whatever brand name they maybe recognize, and they don't really put much thought into what is this set of strings actually going to do? What does it make this sound like, and why does it sound the way it does? Why is this my favorite set of strings?
Yep. Yeah, and I think for most people, when they ask themselves that question, why is this my favorite set? They don't know the answer. They'll say, "Oh, I like it because it feels good." Well, if you haven't played anything else in 10 years, how do you know what feels good or feels bad? It's subjective.
I agree. Guitar players as a whole, guitar players and bass players need to stretch out a little bit, try a lot of different things. Don't be too close-minded when it comes to your instruments and your strings and your pickups and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a whole world of stuff to experiment with out there. That's what we got to do. We got to experiment. We got to test out new things. I never once in my life thought I'd become a digital amp guy, and I still play tube amps. But when I'm recording half the time now, it's a plug-in. I never thought that was going to be me, but here I am.
Who'd have thought? Look at you, all grown up.
I lived long enough to become a villain, I guess. Is that the term? Is that how that works?
Yes.
So what does the day-to-day life look like for somebody in your shoes? Well, obviously you talked about some of the things you do. You talked about, the Musicians Institute, and you talked about you're building guitars, but you wake up, you put your shoes on, you grab yourself a cup of coffee, and what's the average day look like?
That I spend like the first hour or two in makeup and
Sure.
getting my hair did, my nails done, all that. And then I put on my Superman suit just like everybody else, This right here, this probably looks, you probably think this is just some old hoodie. This isn't a hood, it's actually a cape.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I thought I saw you fly into your chair earlier. Is that right?
I'm fairly amazing.
You came down from the ceiling. I guess we should have been recording.
I hope you got all that on camera. Yeah. People want to see, like, you see this. See that trophy sitting back there?
Yeah.
That was that was the first year that I won World's Handsomest Luthier.
That's a very competitive field. I know you're down there with Brian Nutter, and he's a good looking man. So that had to have been really
Brian Nutter.
Nutter Guitars.
I don't think
He
I've
was
ever
also
heard of him.
I don't know what you would call him, a sideman in Nashville for many years. Played with a lot of big names.
Brian Nutter. I'll have to look him up. I know Brian. I know Brian very well. Brian's a great player. He's a great builder, and a handsome man in his own right.
He is a handsome man, and
he'll tell you.
Detailed his harrowing. He will. He will. He detailed his rather harrowing experience with a nut, not a guitar nut, about killing him on this podcast, and it was the scariest food-based story I've ever heard in my entire life. It was horrifying.
Yes.
I don't mean to laugh because but it was so bad.
Yeah, that happened at the school. That was crazy. I was actually not on staff for that particular semester. I mean, I was on staff, but I wasn't active for that particular semester. And then I got a call from the director asking if I could take over a few classes. And I was like, yeah, sure. Why? And then he told me about it. I'm like, I had no idea, but yeah, that was awful.
It was insane. We don't need to rehash it all here, but listeners, go back and check out the episode with Brian Nutter from probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark. It is the craziest story I've heard it's absolutely insane. So go check that out. He's a really cool dude. That is a great episode, and it's one of the most insane experiences I've ever heard. Ever.
It was crazy. He's we're glad he's still around.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm
Kelly.
Not. But I mean, some
You're
people
not?
are. No.
Some people are happy he's around, but you're a little bit upset about it.
Yeah.
Well, he made you have to go to work. That jerk.
I know. I mean, I was chilling, and then have to go to work, all because of him. So I blame him.
Man, I think he'll probably accept that blame. I think he will.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you grew up, in the punk rock, the birth of punk rock, I believe is what you said. Were you like an active part of the scene, or were you just a casual observer and enjoyer? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, just the time period, because I'm old. I just was able to witness the birth of punk rock and see it in its infancy and see it grow and kind of die and kind of come back and then become pop punk. And I don't know, it was a cool thing. I mean, of course, if you live here in the Nashville area, you got to be in bands. You got to be in 1,000 bands. And back in those days, in the let's say the early 80s especially, Nashville had a really pretty amazing and diverse kind of alternative music scene. There were lots of punk bands, lots of metal bands, lots of what was termed alternative at the time. We had a great college radio station here that really supported it, and it wasn't out of the question for bands to kind of score record deals and that sort of thing out of Nashville. That was obviously back when a record deal was something that you strived for, and there was a lot of that back in those days. A lot of bands out there touring, and I played in I couldn't tell you how many bands. It was like whoever was needing. I was a bass player, so it was whoever was needing a bass player at the time. I was out there, and there was a point where I had some moderate success in getting the old record deal and getting to tour and have the old MTV video and that sort of thing. Of course, those are all days long gone. There's no I don't know that MTV even exists anymore, at least not as it did back in the early days, pre YouTube.
I think it's just a vehicle for the Kardashians these days. Like that's pretty much all MTV is.
Aren't we all?
You know what? You might be right about that. Yeah,
We're all just living in
true.
the giant butt shadow of the Kardashians.
That's right. It's cold down here in the shadow. Wish I could get some sunlight. Those things are really blocking out the whole UV ray situation down here is a little bit rough.
Maybe they'll shine on us at some point.
It'll probably just be a reflection.
Yeah, you know.
Oh man, what was the band called?
Oh,
the one that was on MTV.
Nothing you ever heard of. It was called The Hardcore. We were so yeah, here's our little claim to fame. We were the first video ever to be played on Yo MTV Raps and Headbangers Ball at the same time.
All right. You know what I'm looking up after this podcast is over? I'm going down the YouTube rabbit hole. I'm going to find it.
Yeah, I'll have to charge you for that. I'll send you an invoice.
Okay. You can go ahead and send it. I'll pay it when I get around to it. If that works for you.
Yeah. It'd probably be the most money I've made off of that thing in 30 years.
Well, we've had to have a couple breaks here and there, so I'm been watching the clock, trying to do some mental math and make sure we're roughly on schedule here. So we are getting fairly close to the end of the episode, if I'm doing my math correctly. But before I ask the classic questions that I like to wrap these episodes up on, I like to give the guests the time to take the stage to shout out whoever they want to shout out, plug anything they want to plug, or just tell the world how good looking they are. So now is your opportunity.
I kind of don't feel like I need to tell anybody how good looking I am, to be quite honest. I mean, if you're looking, you see it. That's all. I mean, I don't know really what else to say about that.
Well, you should probably describe it a little bit, because while we do have video here, primarily this is an audio podcast. That's where most people listen to it. So you might want to describe the Adonis-like features that so people really get a good idea of what we're working with here.
You ever hear that song by, I forget who it was by, called More Than Words? More Than Words Could Ever
Extreme.
Say? That's what I look like. That's exactly what I look like. So, I mean, I'd have to invent words. I don't even know what, I don't have that kind of time, but it's something.
It's something for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, World's Handsomest Lucy, or for probably, I guess, 30 years running. I think they even stopped having the contest just because it wasn't even fair. But you know what?
Ended it.
They did. Mm-hmm. I would, as far as shouting out to people, you know what? My friends kind of know who they are, I guess. But I'm looking forward to some stuff in the next year. I'm probably saying something about this probably a little too early, but I'm going to do some things with God City Instruments that we're kind of excited about. And maybe I'll just float that out there, but some cool stuff that I'm excited about, as Kurt is as well, I think. And probably mid 2023 you'll see some of those things get out there on the market. And going to continue building the K Butler guitars, the 64, the Shark. Really excited about the Shark bass that I've done a few of, maybe a handful, 10, 12, something like that. And it's kind of the bass that I would have kind of wish I had when I was out there playing. It's got its own thing going on. It's got some unique tones to it. It's got some we use the Duo Mag pickups in those, which are not like anything else out there. you couldn't really pin it down to, well, is it a P or a J or a whatever? It's not any of those. It's got its own. It's in its own world. It's a rock bass through and through. It's hugely powerful. Um, and if you look back in the archives and see like the old the first act Delgado bass,
Mm-hmm.
tone wise, it kind of lives in that area. Oddly, the Duo Mag pickups are also what we used in the DC6 and DC9 on a lot of those.
Oh.
It's the same pickup in the guitar and the bass. So it's really a bass that's got its own thing going on. It's monstrous tone wise, and it's the kind of thing that'll make an old fat guy like me want to come out of retirement and play bass again or something. But I'm not.
I like it. That's super cool. You're not going to? No? Can't talk you into it?
Well, I mean, the public is clamoring for it, so I mean, maybe I'll have to. But
and after this episode, you never know. You never know what could happen.
Yeah, there's okay. a line of fans outside the shop now.
just blowing, right? Just spinning their blades. Oh, or different kind of fan. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. All right, final questions of the episode. These are what I call the classic questions. And the first one's usually pretty easy. Second one gets a little dicey, but we'll start with the first one here. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
So, favorite Boss pedal, I will tell you that I used an Octaver and an Overdrive a lot back when I was playing bass professionally. I used those things a lot, and I really liked them.
I thought that question was going to, when I first started asking people that, I thought it was going to be like a, maybe, I don't know. I thought people were going to really have to think about it. And some people do, but most of the time it's just that easy. They just pull it out and they're like, this is my favorite Boss pedal. Like, okay, this is a cleaner question than I anticipated. But the final question.
I loved them. What do you got?
A final question is the controversial one. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
You know what? I'll tell you something stupid about pizza. Growing up around Nashville, we didn't have anything around here for pizza except the chain pizza places, Pizza Hut, Domino's, whatever. And so I always heard people talking about good pizza. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I like Domino's. I had no idea. And when I moved up to Boston, I was like, oh, okay, so this is good pizza. There was some really good pizza up in Boston. I couldn't tell you a brand name. It was just like, little places that made pizza. And then venturing on out into New York and stuff and getting pizza at any place there, it was all great. So now in Nashville, we have 5 Points Pizza, which is excellent. And I love it, and I get it whenever I can get out there. So we'll say 5 Points Pizza.
5 Points is a classic. I love 5 Points. And to anyone that lives in Nashville, I always like to throw out one that's a little bit newer. They started making pizza during lockdown because they had to have something to deliver. And they do an incredible job, and it's at Smith & Lentz Brewing. They make incredible pizza there. I highly suggest checking that out if you get the opportunity to, because it is. Oh, I still think about it. It's very good.
Now that you said it, I'm going to go over there tonight.
Hey, there you go. Good timing.
I'll tell them you sent me. Does that get me anything?
They might throw you out. Actually, so don't do that. Don't do that.
I've been thrown out of places. That's all right.
We got to get the pizza first, then you can tell them.
Yeah.
So, well, Kelly, thank you so much for hanging out. This was a really fun chat, and thank you for the history lesson and the education on all the first act stuff. We'll see what kind of problems we can cause in the Patreon section. Does that sound good?
Well, sounds great. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. For Kelly, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones.
Alrighty, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Yes, I am back here in the side yard. The oil drip is about done. We've drained about all the oil we're going to get out of that, and I will be replacing said oil so said adventure can begin, which I guess you don't really need to know about. What you need to know about is that there are more conversations available on Patreon, including more with Kelly. Kelly and I get into some weird stuff. We have some more fun over on Patreon, and if you want to support the show and you want to get more beamed right to your ears, patreon.com/tonemob is the place to do just that. So thank you to everyone that does that. It helps immensely. I can't thank you enough. And please, please, please share this with your friends. Subscribe. All that good stuff. It really, really helps. Sharing is the most important thing, though. If you can share this episode with somebody that you think really, really will get something out of it, it would mean the world to me, and it helps so, so, so much. I've said this a few times, but we were among the top 5% of podcasts shared on Spotify last year, and that is incredibly helpful. I said we. What I mean is me, because it is just me. I'm here literally by myself right as I record this. And it helps so much. It helps me keep going. Sharing this is the most immense thing, and I really, really appreciate all you for doing that. Please check out Kelly, and I hope you all have a very good one.
One last thing before we totally sign off here, I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hey, this is Chris Swinney, formerly of the Ataris and currently host of That One Time on Tour, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Have you ever wondered what it's really like on the road? The highs can be euphoric, but the lows can be crushing. Join me every week as I chat with industry pros about what it's like living out their wildest dream and, in some cases, their worst nightmare. Past guests of the show include members of NoFX, Pennywise, Bad Religion, and more. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey there, I am Johnny Christ from Avenged Sevenfold, and I've got a podcast called Drinks with Johnny you're going to want to check out. I sit down with a bunch of different people from all different walks of life, from professional wrestlers to actors, comedians, fighters, musicians, everything in between. I'm just looking to make some friends and have a good time doing it. So if that sounds like something you're into, go check out Drinks with Johnny, streaming everywhere now.